Welcome to the Aleck Pain to Performance podcast, hosted by Dr. Jake Aleck and Dr. Kyle Richmond. Here we discuss health, fitness, and nutrition-related topics. Dr. Richmond and I are chiropractic physicians based out of Frankfort, Illinois. We treat all things pain. If you move it, we treat it. For more information about the clinic or us, check out AleckPainToPerformance.com. We appreciate your time and attention and hope you enjoy the show.
All right, guys, today we're going to talk about joint training versus pattern training. It's something that we've kind of started diving into a little more in our own training. But let's first start with, Jake, what is pattern training?
Okay, so patterns are 6 different movements and the way the human body is meant to move. So we call it pattern trainings because instead of going to the gym and saying, I'm going to go train biceps or shoulders or glutes, we can just say, I'm going to go train this pattern of movement, which then should encompass those type of different muscles.
Right.
So the 6 patterns are pushing, so any motion where you push either in front of you or over the top of you. Yep. Pulling motions, whether you're pulling in front of you or pulling on top of you. We have lunging, so if you lunge and you step with one leg.
Yep, single leg.
Squatting, so if you squat up and down. If you bend, so anytime that you're bending to pick something typically off the ground. And then any sort of core or carry motion where you're doing more midline trunk stuff.
Right, we bring those together. Core, carry, kind of, that's one together.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so those are 6.
Yeah, and like you said, why we think that way now is that a living body, you never really just use your front shoulder or you never just use your back shoulder. Everything is kind of connected. So instead of having someone say, all right, what are all the muscles or what are all the exercises to do front shoulder or back shoulder or hamstring, right. It's just do these patterns of motion that you may already know how to do. Mm-hmm. And now you're getting all the muscles that you need to train just by training all those motions.
Right. And that's something you see, every exercise you can see in the gym is we can put it in one of those patterns or categories. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we've seen forever. Traditionally, most people use that. Now, the other side of things, we have something called joint training. So you want to kind of explain what that is and kind of how it's different?
Yes. So now pattern being very generalistic, right, or very zoomed out look.
Right.
Joint training is a very zoomed in look. So instead of saying, all right, we're just going to do a pushing motion, instead I'm going to train internal rotation of my shoulder joint, or I'm going to train dorsiflexion of my ankle. Yeah. It's very finite, and a normal layperson may be like, what the heck is that? Mm-hmm. So we always have them start with, let's just do the most basic ankle motion, or let's do the most basic shoulder motion, and that is a car.
Right. Like you said, that's just going to isolate that one joint, because let's say you're doing a pattern motion, a squat. Well, there's 100 different things going on between the back, the knees, ankles, hips. Okay, that doesn't help us kind of determine that one joint. So if we say, hey, we're going to do a hip car, now we're looking solely at one joint, and we can look at all of that joint's range of motion, and then we can take that from a rehab perspective, a prehab perspective, strength training, you name it. It's got a lot of different variety in it.
Yes, because anytime that you train the joint, a hip or an ankle or knee, that is always going to make the pattern that involves that joint better. Right. So if I'm saying I'm going to train my hip to be better at X, Y, and Z, well, now if I do a squat or a lunge that involves a hip, you're automatically going to be better at squatting or lunging. Yeah. Versus vice versa, if we just lunge more or just squat more, you're not necessarily building a better hip.
Right. Like the example I like to use for people is, and this is pretty relatable, someone who squats and they get that pinching or kind of pain in their hip. Okay, well, you either stop squatting or you try to find some other variation, but you never fix that actual hip. So then we take the joint training, make the hip move better. So now you back out, okay, our squat's great.
Yeah, and we typically see those patients on their last variation where they're like, okay, I initially couldn't front squat, and now I can't this squat, I can't. So they keep doing all these different variations until every squat variation is now painful. Yeah. Now I'll make my appointment. Or
right. So basically, let's kind of tell people, how can you integrate these two? Because there's almost opposite ends of the spectrum, but how can we make those kind of coexist, especially for someone that wants to work out?
First, we always start with good pattern training. So whenever you are making I relate this to kind of going to the grocery store. If you go to the grocery store with no plan of attack, you're just going to endly buy and everything that just looks good, and you're going to go home and be like, gosh darn it, or you spend 2 hours there and you have 8 things in the cart.
Right.
So when you make your workout plan, because I think everyone should have an idea of what they're doing in the gym before they get there.
Right.
Just think, all right, let's do one exercise per pattern.
Yeah.
Right. So let's do one pushing exercise, one pulling exercise, one lunge, one squat, one bend, one core.
Mm-hmm.
If you did that for 4 days out of the week or 3 days out of the week, however you're at right now, and you repeated that for like a month or two,
Right.
your body will feel really darn good.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll have good variability instead of just doing bicep curls or squats every day, you know?
Right.
So first is starting with good pattern training. And then after that, realizing, man, my pushing maybe doesn't feel that great. Or all my pulling exercises, I kind of feel my right arm more than my left. Why does that feel different? Well, that's when people work with us and say, okay, maybe we have to dive into the joint to figure out why things are feeling different.
Right.
All right. So we either help people like that finite, or we'll just say start with cars.
Yeah, cars, because you can do a car during your workout. Okay, I do a shoulder press. That's my pushing motion. In between that, I'm going to do a shoulder car. And kind of during that motion, I determine, man, I really can't move here, or something kind of feels maybe uncomfortable. And then we can come in and help assess that and then make that shoulder joint training stuff more specific for you. And then on the back end, now you get better at pushing.
Yeah, and the very layman's way of what CARs are, CARs stands for Controlled Articular Rotations. Pulling that back, controlled means we do them super slow. Yep. Articular, which means we're moving the joint, and then rotation means we're doing a circle. So essentially, you're doing a slow joint circle at any of the joint that you're training. So there's a shoulder car, there's a neck car, there's a hip car, there's a knee, there's an elbow, like any main joint in the body, there's a car for it. So that's where we get into the morning routine and say, as soon as you start your day, it's almost like a no-brainer just to say, let's move everything maybe a couple times.
Yeah, and that's, again, like, we use this car as like it's our basic joint training. Think of it as more of almost assessment based and maintaining joint health. We can get further in the nitty gritty with some more in-depth things, but that's where I tell everyone to start. Car is just a great assessment. Right. And on our YouTube channel and our website, we have a whole exercise library now of all the individual cars that you guys can go and watch and look into and, you know, play around with.
It's a great way to start, because that's why we do these videos, is just to say, at least give this a try. Because I couldn't tell you the amount of people that's like, man, I've been doing your cars video, my shoulders never felt better. Right. Coach Palace already know who you are. And I go, great. Then you don't even have to come in. Like, you just did what it said on there, and then they just keep showing them and keep doing them. Right. But it's a great, and one of my favorite mentors uses this phrase all the time. It's like kind of like pizza. There's no such thing as bad pizza. Like, whether it's leftover from the night before, cold, hot, whatever it is. If you do cars, even if it's a little wrong, it's still good for you, right? So even if you feel not too competent with it, just keep trying it, keep looking at the videos, and then it's at least your starting point to saying, I'm doing something to maintain my health, the health of my joint, because if you don't do anything for your joints, we only get worse.
Exactly.
That's just the law of living and aging. Unfortunately, if you never put your arm behind you for the next 10 years, you're probably going to be worse at putting your arm behind you 10 years from now.
Yep, it's that use it or lose it.
Right. So we have a very simple system, which is cars, just to show people you may not have the best hip in the world, you may not have the best neck in the world, whatever it is, but let's at least give you a tool to maintain what you currently got so you don't get worse.
Exactly.
And then if they want to work with us to improve it, we got the tools to show them that as well.
Exactly. All right, so I mean, we hit all the main points, talked about what pattern training is, the 6 categories, joint training, how it's more specific, how to integrate those two. Again, just starting with cars, it's the easiest entry-level way into joint training. And then again, let us assess and kind of determine what more you can do on that, and then use our videos on our YouTube and website to kind of further.
With you and your workouts, when do you typically use cars?
I will go in between sets of things. So like I used the example earlier, I'll warm up first off with them. It's always a great low level, just nice and easy. Okay.
Full body every day?
Full body. Yeah, I start in the morning full body, and then that workout, if it's an upper body workout, I usually stick specifically upper body cars to warm up. Okay. Find out how things are feeling. If anything sticks out, okay, then I'll go a little more specific joint training. Okay. But if it's a push day, like I said, shoulder press, okay, I'm doing a shoulder car right afterwards, or right before that set. And Kyle's given it from the exercise realm of resistance training. For more like the biking or running world, I always suggest just do full body, because if you're a runner, if your shoulder does not move good, like, you're literally going to be worse at running because of the gait motion. So when in doubt, if you have the time, do full body, because
Typically, everything is involved, but if you're a little bit more crunch for time, then just hit the areas that you're training. And like you said, just kind of if you're bench pressing, kind of makes sense to move your shoulder. If you're doing squats or lunges, probably would make sense to do something with your knees or hips.
Yeah, any joint that's being used. And back to what you said, that whole daily routine, that morning routine, it doesn't have to just be in the morning, but hit that at some point throughout your day, and it's the best way to assess where you're at.
Morning routine is?
It's full body cars, head to toe, neck all the way down to ankles, toes, you name it. It at least moves every joint, and it's, again, for us, it's a great assessment.
Yeah, and for yourself, because if you wake up one morning and you're like, wow, my right and left shoulder feel brutal every time I put my arm overhead, probably not the best day to do shoulder press.
Right.
You know, so, and if you have 5 days in a row of, wow, my right shoulder feels awful overhead, probably a good day to make an appointment.
Agreed.
You know, so those are pretty much the layup ways to make sure that you're moving good and to make sure that you're not going to train yourself into more harm.
I agree. Anything else you want to hit on?
That's it. Give it a try. Let us know what you think, and then use our resources online as much as you can.
Yep, AleckPainterPerformance.com, and then our YouTube channel, Aleck Painter Performance.
Boom.